My name is Estelle Monroe. I'm 28 years old, and until recently, I genuinely believed love meant being patient enough to survive disrespect. Not dramatic disrespect. Nothing obvious enough for people to immediately tell you to leave. No screaming, no cheating scandals, no holes punched in walls. Just a slow, exhausting erosion of your confidence until you start questioning whether your own unhappiness is somehow selfish. Ryan Carter and I were together for 2 years. For most of that time, we lived together in a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment downtown with huge windows, polished hardwood floors, and enough natural light to make every realtor listing sound poetic. The apartment was technically mine. The lease was in my name. Most of the furniture was mine. Most of the bills were mine too, if we were being honest. But Ryan somehow managed to behave like I was the one lucky to have him there. At first, I didn't notice it happening. That's the dangerous thing about emotionally unbalanced relationships. They rarely collapse overnight. They shift one tiny compromise at a time. I work from home as a freelance brand designer, mostly startup campaigns, digital packaging, visual identity systems. The kind of work people suddenly respect once money gets attached to it. Ryan worked in luxury retail management at an upscale boutique called Velora. He was good-looking in that polished, socially effortless way that immediately impressed strangers. Expensive cologne, perfect teeth, smooth voice. The kind of man who could charm an entire room while quietly making one person inside it feel very small. When we first met at a friend's birthday dinner, he made me laugh so hard I nearly spilled wine across the table. Back then, his confidence felt magnetic. Later, I realized confidence and superiority can sound almost identical in the beginning. The first 6 months together were genuinely good. Then his lease ended, and moving into my apartment seemed practical. He called us a real team. I remember how excited I felt buying extra closet organizers and making space for him in the bathroom cabinet. Like those tiny domestic rituals meant permanence. For a while, they did. Then, little things started changing. Ryan hated that I worked from home. Not openly at first. At first, it came disguised as jokes. "You're still in pajamas? Must be nice not having a real commute. I wish I got paid to sit around drinking coffee all day." I laughed the first few times. That was mistake number 1. Because people often test disrespect through humor first. If you laugh, they keep going. The second bedroom in the apartment was my office. Clean setup, dual monitors, client boards pinned carefully along the wall, quiet space, good lighting. Ryan treated it like a flexible recreational area. He'd walk in during client calls because he wanted to ask something quick. He'd start steaming shirts during presentations because the lighting was better in there. Once, during a meeting with a potential long-term client, he rolled out a yoga mat behind me because the living room apparently didn't have the right energy. I was mortified. After the call ended, I asked him politely not to interrupt my meetings anymore. He actually rolled his eyes. "You're acting like you work at the Pentagon, Estelle." I should have paid attention to how small he needed my work to feel in order to make himself feel important. Instead, I kept explaining myself. That became our pattern. Ryan minimized. I justified. Ryan mocked. I accommodated. Ryan took. I adjusted. Over time, the apartment stopped feeling peaceful. It started feeling performative. Like I was constantly trying to prove my work mattered enough to deserve respect inside my own home. The irony? I was earning almost 3 times what Ryan made. But according to him, his job counted more because he physically left the apartment every morning. He loved saying that. At least I interact with actual people all day. As if my clients weren't real because conversations happened through screens. He started making comments in front of friends, too. One night during drinks with his ex-girlfriend Vanessa and 2 coworkers, Ryan casually laughed and said, "Estelle's basically a retired housewife with Wi-Fi." Everyone chuckled awkwardly. I smiled because humiliation becomes strangely automatic after enough repetition. But inside, something twisted painfully in my chest. What hurt most wasn't the joke. It was how easy it was for him to disrespect me publicly. Like my feelings were expendable as long as he got attention. Then came the chore arguments. Ryan insisted I should handle most household responsibilities because I was home anyway. Didn't matter that I regularly worked 50 to 60-hour weeks. Didn't matter that my deadlines often stretched late into the night. If dishes piled up, somehow that reflected on me. If groceries ran low, that became my responsibility too. One evening, I was still working at nearly 9 after revising an entire branding package for a difficult client. Ryan walked into my office doorway holding an empty takeout container. "So, what's for dinner?" I stared at him. "You're serious? You've been home all day." That sentence sat between us like poison. I remember feeling something shift quietly inside me then. Not anger. Exhaustion. The kind that settles deep into your bones when someone continuously benefits from your effort while pretending your effort doesn't exist. Money made everything uglier. Our rent was $2,200 a month. Ryan contributed $500. That was it. I covered the rest. Utilities, internet, groceries, most dinners out, streaming subscriptions, household supplies. But somehow, according to Ryan, I lacked ambition. He always had explanations for why he couldn't contribute more. Student loans, car payments, retail commissions fluctuating. I believed him because that's what people in love do sometimes. They believe stories that make sacrifice easier. Last Thursday was the moment everything finally broke. I had just landed the biggest contract of my career. 6 months guaranteed work with a rapidly growing tech company. The kind of opportunity freelancers dream about. I was genuinely excited. Nervous, too. My hands were shaking while reviewing the paperwork because I knew this contract could permanently elevate my business. Ryan came home around 6, carrying shopping bags from the boutique. I smiled immediately. "I got the contract." He barely glanced up from his phone. "That's nice, babe." Then he walked toward the kitchen. "Can you clear your stuff off the dining table? Vanessa and Eli are coming over for wine night." My stuff. The stuff was a 60-page contract I had spent all afternoon reviewing. And the reason I was working at the dining table instead of my office? Ryan had spent 3 hours taking photos in there earlier because the lighting made his Instagram stories look better. I took a slow breath. "This is a huge deal for me, Ryan." He shrugged. I said, "Congratulations." "No, you dismissed it." That got his attention. He looked up slowly, with the same expression people use when they think someone is being emotionally inconvenient. "Oh my God, Estelle, why do you always need validation for doing your job?" Something cold moved through me. "Because I'm your girlfriend," I said quietly. "And normal partners care when something important happens." Ryan laughed once under his breath. "I sold $14,000 in merchandise today. You don't see me demanding a parade." "That's not remotely the same thing." "You're right," he said immediately. "My job is harder." I stared at him. He kept going. "I deal with customers all day while you sit at home moving logos around in sweatpants." And there it was again. That contempt. That constant need to make my life sound pathetic. Only this time, something inside me finally stopped bending around it. I looked at him very calmly and said, "You must really hate me." Ryan blinked. "What?" "You talk about me like I'm embarrassing." "Oh my God, here we go." "No," I said. "Actually, I think I'm done going." His face changed slightly then, just enough to show he hadn't expected resistance. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" I stood up slowly from the dining table. "You contribute almost nothing financially. You disrespect my work constantly. You treat my apartment like your personal hotel, and somehow I'm still the lazy one?" Ryan scoffed loudly. "You think you're some kind of victim?" I looked directly into his eyes. "I think you've been comfortable too long." That hit him harder than yelling would have. His entire posture shifted defensively. "Wow," he said coldly. "You know what? Maybe I should stay with Vanessa for a few days." There it was. The threat. Except this time, instead of panicking, I felt strangely calm. "Okay," I said. Ryan frowned. "Okay?" "Yeah, if you want to leave, leave." Silence. Real silence. For the first time in 2 years, the script stopped working. Because people like Ryan threaten distance, expecting pursuit. And when pursuit disappears, panic starts leaking through the cracks. "You seriously don't care?" he asked. I held out my hand. "Your key." His expression turned almost disoriented. "What?" "If you're leaving," I repeated softly, "I need your key." "You're kicking me out?" "No," I said. "You decided to leave. I'm agreeing with you." His face flushed immediately. "This is insane." "No," I said again. "What's insane is how long I convinced myself this relationship was normal." Ryan started shoving clothes aggressively into a duffel bag, while muttering under his breath about how impossible I was. He slammed drawers, cabinets, doors. I didn't stop him. Part of me was still shocked I wasn't chasing after him. Before leaving, he turned dramatically in the doorway. "You'll regret this, Estelle." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said the truest thing I'd admitted in months. "I actually think this might save my life." His jaw tightened. Then he walked out. The apartment became silent. Not lonely.
Silent.
And somehow, that felt completely different. I sat alone at the dining table, staring at the signed contract in front of me, while the city lights flickered outside the windows. For the first time in years, nobody was criticizing the way I worked, or breathed, or existed. That should have felt sad. Instead, it felt terrifyingly peaceful. The next morning, I changed the locks. Best $150 I've ever spent. Friday morning started with silence. Not the tense kind Ryan used to leave behind after arguments, where I'd spend hours trying to figure out how to repair his mood. This silence felt clean. The apartment smelled faintly like coffee and lemon cleaner instead of Ryan's expensive cologne layered over irritation. I worked uninterrupted for nearly 3 straight hours and finished a client revision in half the usual time. That alone should have told me how emotionally exhausted I'd been living. At 11:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Ryan. I stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before opening the message. "I'll need the apartment from 2 to 4 today to pack properly. Make sure you're gone. This is hard enough without your drama." I actually laughed out loud. My drama. Not the man who stormed out after insulting me for the 1,000th time. Not the man who contributed barely anything financially while treating me like dead weight. No, apparently I was the problem because I existed inconveniently inside my own apartment. I typed back carefully. "I work from home. I have client calls all afternoon. You can come after 6. His response came immediately. "That doesn't work for me. Vanessa can only help me move from 2 to 4. Then another text. "Just go work at a coffee shop or something." The entitlement in that sentence made something inside me go completely cold. "No," I replied, "after 6. 3 dots appeared instantly, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally. "Stop being petty, Estelle." I set the phone face down and returned to work. At exactly 2:03 p.m., my doorbell rang. Of course he came anyway. I checked the security camera feed from my phone and immediately saw Ryan standing outside the building entrance with Vanessa beside him, wearing oversized sunglasses and visible annoyance. Behind them stood 2 more people and a guy near a pickup truck. 5 people. For 1 bedroom's worth of belongings. Ryan confidently inserted his key into the building entrance. Nothing happened. He tried again. Then again. Even through the grainy camera feed, I saw the exact second realization hit him. The locks had been changed. His entire body stiffened. Then came the aggressive buzzing. "Estelle!" he yelled through the intercom. "Open the door!" I pressed the speaker calmly. "I told you after 6. This is ridiculous." "No," I said quietly. Ignoring my schedule for 2 years was ridiculous. Vanessa leaned toward the intercom dramatically. "Wow, Ryan wasn't exaggerating. You're actually insane." I almost smiled. Funny how people become crazy the second they stop being convenient. Ryan buzzed again aggressively. "I need my things. And you can get them after 6. I have plans tonight. Not my problem." The silence that followed felt radioactive. Then came the banging. Not polite knocking. Banging. the kind designed for performance. "You can't lock me out." "You moved out last night," I replied evenly. "You announced you were staying elsewhere." "I live here." "No," I said. "You stayed here." Vanessa scoffed loudly enough for me to hear through the speaker. "Oh my God, Estelle. What kind of woman does this to her boyfriend?" I muted the intercom. Then I walked back to my office, put on noise-canceling headphones, and joined my client Zoom meeting. That was the moment I realized boundaries only feel cruel to people who benefited from you not having any. They finally left after about 20 minutes. My phone exploded immediately afterward. "You're unbelievable. You embarrassed me. Vanessa says this is legally harassment. You're acting emotionally unstable. All my skincare is there. Do you even realize how expensive that stuff is?" I ignored every message. Around 7 that evening, the texts changed tone entirely. "Maybe we both overreacted. Can we please talk like adults? I miss you." That one almost got me. Not because I believed him. Because some small, damaged part of me still wanted him to mean it. That's the difficult thing about emotionally manipulative relationships. Your brain can recognize mistreatment long before your emotions catch up. By Saturday morning, the sweetness disappeared again. I woke up to 11 unread messages. "If anything is damaged, you're paying for it. I should call the police. You can't hold my belongings hostage. Vanessa thinks you're spiraling mentally." That last one made me stare at the screen for a very long time. Because it suddenly hit me that Ryan had probably been describing me this way to other people for years. Too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic. Meanwhile, I had spent 2 years shrinking myself to avoid upsetting him. I got out of bed, made coffee, and started packing his belongings. Everything. Clothes, shoes, jewelry, designer products, half-used shampoo bottles, random chargers, gym bags. I packed carefully and methodically, labeling each box with black marker. Then I photographed everything. Every box, every item, every angle. Because something deep down told me Ryan was the kind of person who escalated when he lost control. By Saturday afternoon, the apartment looked lighter, cleaner. Like someone had opened windows in a room that had been suffocating quietly for years. I sent one text. "Your belongings are packed. Pickup window is Sunday between 10 a.m. and noon. Bring help." His response came almost immediately. "I can't do mornings. I have brunch plans." I stared at the message in disbelief. Then typed, "Next Sunday then, same hours." The meltdown that followed was honestly impressive. "Are you serious right now? You're doing this on purpose. This is abusive behavior." "I swear to God, Estelle." I muted the conversation. Then I ordered Thai food and spent the evening watching a documentary Ryan would have mocked for being depressingly nerdy. Halfway through the movie, I realized something strange. I could finally hear myself think. No tension, no criticism, no anticipating someone else's moods. Just peace. Actual peace. Sunday morning arrived bright and cold. I walked to the coffee shop downstairs before Ryan's scheduled pickup because I needed caffeine and emotional reinforcement. That's where Nora Bennett changed the entire direction of the story. Nora was 26, with dark curls usually tied into a messy bun, and the kindest eyes I'd seen in a long time. We weren't close, exactly. Just familiar. She knew my order. I knew she was in nursing school. We occasionally talked about books while she handed me coffee. That morning, she looked at me carefully while preparing my drink. "You okay?" I hesitated, then gave her the shortened version. "Boyfriend moved out," I said. "Today is apparently the dramatic final retrieval of belongings." Nora winced sympathetically. "Oof." I nodded tiredly. He's probably going to make a scene. "Wait," she said slowly. "Your boyfriend isn't Ryan Carter, right?" I blinked. "Yeah, you know him?" The look on her face answered before she did. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten instantly. "Tall, blonde, works at Maison Velora?" "Yeah." Nora leaned against the counter slightly. "I used to work there." A strange feeling crawled up my spine. Oh. He was my supervisor for a while. The pause afterward carried weight. Not gossip. Recognition. Then Nora gave a small, uncomfortable laugh. He honestly treated employees the same way he treated customers who couldn't afford things. My chest tightened. What does that mean? Nora glanced around before lowering her voice. He embarrassed people a lot. Publicly. That sounded painfully familiar. She continued carefully. I quit after he kept messing with my shifts and blaming me for inventory issues I didn't cause. What? He tried to accuse me of stealing, eventually, she said matter-of-factly. Security footage proved I didn't. I stared at her. The casual cruelty of that sounded horrifyingly believable. Then Nora added the sentence that changed everything. Honestly, I always thought it was weird he acted broke all the time. I frowned. What do you mean? He used to brag about investment properties constantly, she said, and about how financially smart he was. The world seemed to tilt slightly. Investment properties. Ryan had spent 2 years complaining about debt and financial stress. 2 years watching me pay almost everything because he supposedly couldn't afford more. Nora continued obliviously. I remember one time he made fun of another manager for renting because he said owning property was basic adult intelligence. I felt physically nauseated. Suddenly, every conversation about money replayed differently in my head. Every excuse, every sigh, every guilt trip. Ryan wasn't struggling. Ryan was using me. Nora noticed my expression immediately. Oh no, she said softly. You didn't know. I shook my head slowly. No, I whispered. I really didn't. I left the cafe feeling like someone had quietly rewritten the last 2 years of my life. At 10:14, Ryan arrived. This time with Vanessa, Vanessa's boyfriend, and 2 girls I didn't recognize. An audience, again. I opened the apartment door, but stayed firmly in the doorway. The boxes are here, I said calmly. Ryan looked past me immediately. I need to check the apartment. No. His jaw tightened. How do I know you packed everything? I held up my phone, showing time-stamped photos. Because I documented every box. Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically. This is psychotic behavior. No, I said. This is organized behavior. Ryan tried stepping forward anyway. I blocked the doorway instantly. Something shifted visibly in his expression then. Because for the first time, I wasn't intimidated by him emotionally. That terrified him more than yelling ever could. Ryan stared at me like he genuinely didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him anymore. Maybe he didn't. For 2 years, I had been predictable. Patient. Flexible. Understanding. Easy to guilt. The woman blocking the doorway calmly, while refusing to let him control the situation, was someone entirely different. You're seriously not letting me inside? He asked. No. His face hardened instantly. Unbelievable. Behind him, Vanessa crossed her arms dramatically, while the others shifted awkwardly around the hallway, pretending not to witness the collapse of a relationship in real time. Ryan pointed toward the stacked boxes near the entryway. That better be everything. It is. You probably kept things out of spite. I almost laughed. The projection was exhausting. I packed your belongings more carefully than you ever treated me. That landed harder than I expected. His expression flickered. Only for a second. But long enough for me to realize something important. Ryan wasn't angry because he missed me. He was angry because he no longer controlled the emotional atmosphere. He tried a different tactic immediately. Fine, he snapped. Then at least pay me back for the utilities I covered. I blinked slowly. What utilities? His voice grew louder instantly for the audience behind him. The utilities I've been paying for 2 years. Vanessa nodded aggressively beside him. Exactly. I looked directly at Ryan. You paid $500 total each month. That included utilities. No, I said calmly. It included a tiny fraction of rent. Ryan scoffed dramatically. You seriously think I'm stupid enough not to keep receipts? Perfect, I replied. Show them. Silence. Not one person behind him moved. Ryan's jaw flexed. Because there were no receipts. There had never been receipts. I watched embarrassment creep slowly across his face, while the people behind him began exchanging uncomfortable glances. One of the girls quietly checked her phone, like she suddenly wanted to disappear. Ryan recovered quickly. People like him always do. "You know what?" he said coldly. "Forget it. Keep pretending you're the victim."
Victim.
That word again. Funny how the people who drain you emotionally always accuse you of becoming selfish once you stop volunteering yourself for sacrifice. They loaded the boxes into the truck in tense silence. Ryan avoided looking directly at me most of the time. Not because he was hurt. Because losing emotional access to me bruised his ego in ways he didn't know how to process. Right before leaving, he turned back one last time. "You know you'll never find another guy willing to deal with your lifestyle, right?" I tilted my head slightly. "My lifestyle? You work alone all day. You barely go out. You live inside your own head." He laughed bitterly. "You're going to die alone in some apartment, staring at a laptop." The old version of me would have cried hearing that. This version just felt tired. "Goodbye, Ryan." That visibly irritated him more than anger would have. He wanted emotional reaction.
Pain. Begging. Defensiveness.
My calmness denied him all of it. He slammed the truck door hard enough to rattle the frame before leaving. And just like that, the apartment became completely mine again. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the empty spaces where his belongings used to be. No shoes near the door, no expensive jackets thrown carelessly over chairs, no critical energy hanging in the air. Just quiet. I didn't realize how much emotional noise Ryan carried until it disappeared. Monday morning, I woke up genuinely rested for the first time in months. Then my email ruined it. The subject line read, "Concern regarding professional conduct." My stomach dropped immediately. The message was from my biggest long-term client. We'd worked together for nearly 3 years.
Reliable relationship. Consistent contracts. Mutual trust.
My hands shook slightly opening the email. "Someone anonymously contacted us, claiming you have ongoing substance abuse issues affecting project reliability. We do not believe the accusations, but wanted to notify you directly in case this is part of a personal harassment situation." I stopped breathing for a second. Then I read the attached screenshot. Anonymous account. Vague accusations, no evidence. But the tone felt familiar. Cruel in a strangely personal way. I immediately thought of Ryan. Not because I had proof. Because the message sounded emotionally vindictive instead of professionally concerned. Like someone angry I still had stability after they left. I called the client immediately. Thankfully, they trusted me enough to recognize the accusations as nonsense. Still, after hanging up, I sat motionless at my desk for several minutes staring at nothing. Because suddenly, the breakup no longer felt messy. It felt dangerous. There's a specific kind of fear that appears when someone realizes emotional manipulation isn't working anymore. Sometimes they escalate. Tuesday made things worse. My landlord called around noon, sounding deeply confused. "Hey, Estelle," he said carefully. "Did you ask your boyfriend to be added to the lease?" Ice flooded my chest. "What?" "He called earlier, claiming you both discussed updating paperwork." I closed my eyes slowly. Of course he did. "No," I said immediately. "Absolutely not." Thankfully, my landlord had enough experience with relationship drama to recognize something was off. "I figured," he admitted. "Didn't sound right." After we hung up, I sat there, staring out the apartment window, feeling physically exhausted. Ryan wasn't trying to reconcile. He was trying to regain access. Control disguised as attachment. That realization changed everything emotionally. Because it meant the relationship probably hadn't been as mutual as I believed. Maybe I had simply been useful. Wednesday passed quietly. Too quietly. Then, Thursday morning, Nora texted me. "Hey, weird question." My stomach tightened instantly. "What?" "Your ex wouldn't happen to drive a white Honda, would he?" I stood up immediately and walked toward the window. Across the street sat Ryan's car, parked beside the coffee shop. My heartbeat slowed into something cold. "How long has he been there?" I texted back. "Since before we opened? Like 2 hours." I watched his silhouette through the windshield, just sitting there, watching my building. The unsettling thing about being observed by someone who used to love you is realizing how quickly familiarity can start feeling invasive. "Want me to call someone?" Nora asked. "Not yet," I replied. Then another text came immediately. "He asked one of the girls here if you've brought any men around lately." That made my skin crawl, because suddenly it wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was surveillance. At 10, I deliberately positioned myself near the apartment window during a video call so Ryan could clearly see me working calmly and normally. I wanted him to understand something. I was not emotionally collapsing without him. Around 11, his car finally pulled away. But my mind stayed trapped on something Nora had said earlier. Investment properties. That afternoon, I did something I normally never would have done. I researched him. Public property records exist for a reason. Turns out, Ryan's parents owned multiple rental properties across the city. One was partially under his name. Then I found social media posts from nearly 2 years ago where he celebrated paying off his student loans completely. My chest actually hurt reading them. Because during that exact period, I had been covering nearly every household expense, believing he was financially drowning. He lied. Not occasionally.
Systematically. Deliberately.
I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, while memories replayed differently inside my head. Every complaint about money, every excuse, every guilt trip whenever I brought up balance. Ryan wasn't struggling financially. He was protecting his own lifestyle while spending mine. And somehow, that betrayal hurt even more than the insults. Thursday evening, Nora texted again. "Your ex is here." I froze. "What's he doing?" "Asking questions about you. What time you usually come in? If you meet people here." I exhaled slowly. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of fear, I felt clarity. Like the emotional fog finally lifted completely. Because suddenly, Ryan's behavior looked painfully obvious. He never respected me. He respected access. Access to the apartment. Access to financial comfort. Access to emotional labor. Access to control. Without those things, he became frantic. Then, another memory surfaced suddenly. A conversation from weeks earlier. Nora casually mentioning her roommate was moving out soon and she might not be able to afford the place alone. An idea clicked instantly. Not impulsive exactly, more like overdue. I typed carefully. "Random question. Are you still looking for a roommate?" Her response came fast. "Wait, you?" I smiled faintly. "Maybe. But what about your apartment?" I looked around slowly. The beautiful windows, the expensive space, the memories soaked into every room. Then I answered honestly. "I think I need a fresh start." Nora sent back 3 dots. Then, "Honestly, I think you deserve one." That sentence hit me harder than she probably realized. Because for 2 years, I'd been surviving criticism so constantly that simple kindness felt shocking. Saturday morning, I went to see Nora's place. A converted Victorian house on Park Street with old hardwood floors and massive windows spilling golden light across the living room. Smaller than my apartment. Less polished. But warmer somehow. Alive. Nora showed me the second bedroom apologetically. "It's tiny." "It's peaceful," I corrected softly. And it was. No emotional history attached to it. No tension lingering in corners. No memories of being diminished. Just possibility. The landlord liked that I worked remotely. Nora liked that I was organized. And somewhere during that afternoon, while sunlight stretched across the old kitchen tiles and Nora talked excitedly about nursing school rotations, I realized something quietly devastating. I felt safer with this near stranger than I had felt with my own boyfriend in months. I signed the lease before sunset. Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared quietly. Gave notice on my apartment, sold furniture, donated things I no longer needed. Every box packed felt strangely emotional. like removing evidence of the woman I used to be. The woman who kept mistaking endurance for love. Moving day arrived on a gray Saturday morning. The movers worked quickly. By noon, the apartment stood nearly empty. Just echoes and dust and pale rectangles where furniture used to sit. I was finishing the final walkthrough when someone knocked softly at the door. Not the buzzer. A knock. I looked through the peephole. Ryan stood outside, holding a Starbucks cup and wearing an expression so hopeful it almost startled me. Like he genuinely believed this story wasn't over yet. I opened the door halfway. His eyes widened immediately as he looked past me into the empty apartment. "You're moving?" "Yep," I said simply. Ryan stared past me into the hollow apartment, like he'd just walked into the wrong reality. The living room was empty, except for a few taped boxes near the wall, waiting for the movers to return. The dining table where we'd had our final argument was gone. The framed prints had been removed from the walls, leaving pale outlines behind. The apartment looked stripped down to its skeleton. And somehow, so did he. "What do you mean you're moving?" he asked again. I adjusted my grip on the door. "I mean exactly that." "But why?" The question almost made me laugh. Because even after everything, Ryan still believed every decision I made revolved around him. Not around my peace. Not around my future. Not around my happiness. Him. I stepped back into the apartment to grab my keys. Things change. Ryan followed me inside before I could stop him. The audacity honestly would have shocked me once. Now it just felt predictable. He turned slowly in the empty living room, disbelief spreading across his face. "You loved this apartment." "I used to." "This was perfect for your work." "It stopped feeling perfect a while ago." He looked at me sharply then. "Is this because of me?" There it was. I zipped up my jacket calmly. "Not everything is about you, Ryan." That sentence hit him like a slap. His expression changed instantly. Not sadness.
Offense.
Because people who center themselves in every story take boundaries personally. "This is insane," he muttered, pacing slowly through the empty space. "You're actually moving just to prove some point." "No," I said. "I'm moving because I finally realized I was unhappy here." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" He stopped pacing. Then, almost frighteningly fast, his entire demeanor softened. His shoulders lowered, his voice gentled, his eyes glossed over slightly. It was so sudden, I almost admired the performance. "Estelle," he said quietly. "I've been thinking a lot." I said nothing. We were together for 2 years. Again, silence. I know I said things I shouldn't have said. That almost made me smile. Things. Like systematically humiliating me for years was a communication error instead of a personality pattern. Ryan stepped closer, carefully. I was angry. "You were cruel." His jaw tightened briefly, before smoothing out again. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between us. That was a lie. People always know when they're disrespecting you repeatedly. They just assume you'll continue tolerating it. "I think maybe we both got stuck in bad habits," he continued softly. "But that doesn't mean we should throw everything away." Everything. Interesting word for a relationship where one person carried almost all the emotional and financial weight. I walked toward the kitchen counter to grab my water bottle. Ryan followed immediately. "We could start over." "No." The answer came out instantly.
Firm. Certain. Easy.
That startled him more than anything else had. "You're not even thinking about it?" "I already did." "You're really willing to throw away 2 years?" I looked at him carefully then. "No," I said quietly. "I think I already threw away 2 years. I'm just finally stopping." His expression cracked for a second. Then anger leaked through again. "This is because of another guy, isn't it?" I almost laughed from pure exhaustion. "No. There has to be someone else." "There isn't." "You expect me to believe you'd suddenly move out of this apartment for no reason?" The irony of that question nearly took me out. As if emotional survival wasn't reason enough. Ryan stared at me intensely. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. The roommate. I blinked once. What? The person you're moving in with. His tone sharpened instantly. It's a man, isn't it? No. He stared. Then something shifted visibly in his face. A woman? Yes. His laugh came out harsh and disbelieving. You're moving in with some random woman? She's not random. What's her name? I hesitated for half a second. Nora. Recognition flashed across his face instantly. Then came disbelief. No. I said nothing. The coffee shop girl? I crossed my arms. She has a name. Ryan actually looked offended. You're moving in with a barista? There it was again. That quiet superiority. That instinctive need to rank people by status and usefulness. And suddenly, I saw him more clearly than ever before. Not confident.
Insecure.
A man who needed to feel above other people constantly because deep down, he was terrified of being ordinary. She's also finishing nursing school, I said calmly. Ryan scoffed. So this is what? Revenge? No, it's rent, split evenly between two adults who respect each other. That shut him up briefly. Then something changed again. The performance dropped completely. Panic finally surfaced underneath everything else. Real panic. He rubbed his face hard. Okay, he said quietly. Can I just be honest? I leaned against the counter silently. Vanessa's apartment is temporary. There it was. Not heartbreak.
Logistics.
My parents are making this whole thing impossible, he continued quickly. And apartments right now are insane. I watched him carefully. For the first time since the breakup, he actually looked nervous. Not about losing me. About losing stability. I need this apartment, Estelle. The sentence hung heavily in the air.
Need.
Not miss. Not love. Need. I felt something inside me finally settle completely. Because there it was. The truth. Not hidden behind charm or manipulation or guilt anymore. Just naked self-interest. You could sublet it to me, he rushed forward. I can pay the full rent now. Now. Interesting timing. It's already rented, I said calmly. His entire face fell. What? New tenants move in Monday. Ryan stared at me like I'd physically hit him. But where am I supposed to go? I looked at him for a long moment, then answered honestly. That stopped being my responsibility when you treated me like garbage. He actually looked wounded by that, as if consequences felt unfair simply because they were happening to him. I didn't mean the things I said. Yes, you did. No! You meant every single one, I interrupted quietly. You just didn't think I'd ever leave.
Silence.
Heavy silence. Ryan looked away first. Then came the desperation again. Estelle, please. That word sounded foreign coming from him. I know we can fix this. I shook my head slowly. You spent 2 years teaching me my feelings didn't matter. Now you want me to rescue you from consequences? His face tightened instantly. That's not fair. I almost smiled.
Fair.
Another word people suddenly love once life stops favoring them. Ryan followed me downstairs while I finished the last walkthrough with the movers. Still talking, still bargaining, still shifting between soft pleading and irritation. The doorman watched the entire thing with visible fascination. Honestly, I think he disliked Ryan almost as much as I eventually learned to. We stepped outside into the cool afternoon air. And then the universe delivered timing so perfect, it honestly felt scripted. Nora walked up the sidewalk carrying a box of kitchen supplies toward the moving truck. She spotted me immediately and smiled brightly. Hey, roomie. Ryan froze. Completely froze. Nora stopped beside us, adjusting the box in her arms. I found the extra hangers you wanted. Then she finally noticed Ryan standing there, looking horrified. Recognition flashed across her face instantly. Oh, she said pleasantly. Hi, Ryan. His expression darkened. You've got to be kidding me. Nora smiled politely. The girl with the fake designer purse remembers you too. Ryan looked at me in disbelief. This was planned. No, I said calmly. It really wasn't. You're trying to humiliate me. That almost made me laugh. The man who publicly mocked my career for years suddenly found humiliation unacceptable. Interesting. Nora shifted the box slightly. Honestly, she said casually, I think Estelle just got tired of being treated badly. Ryan ignored her completely. She works at a coffee shop. Nora burst out laughing immediately. Part-time, she corrected. I'm in my last semester of nursing school. Ryan looked embarrassed for exactly 1 second before masking it with annoyance. Meanwhile, I just stood there, realizing something quietly important. Nora had defended me more naturally in 2 weeks than Ryan had in 2 years. The movers called my name from the truck. I grabbed the final box. Ryan stepped closer one last time. So that's it? I looked at him calmly. That was it a long time ago. I just finally admitted it. His face hardened again. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said, but at least it'll be my mistake. Then I climbed into the truck beside Nora. As we pulled away, I looked back once through the side mirror. Ryan still stood there on the sidewalk, holding that stupid Starbucks cup, looking completely lost. Not heartbroken.
Disoriented.
Like life had suddenly stopped, following the version he wrote in his head. That was 3 weeks ago. And honestly, my new life feels quiet in the best possible way. Nora's an incredible roommate. Clean, respectful, emotionally normal. When I landed another major client last week, she bought cheap wine and cupcakes to celebrate, because apparently that's what supportive people do when someone they care about succeeds. No mocking, no competition, no resentment. Just kindness. Turns out, kindness feels radically different once you stop confusing it with weakness. Ryan eventually moved back in with his parents. According to mutual acquaintances, he's telling people I emotionally manipulated him and kicked him out without warning. That story apparently fell apart after his parents ran into my old doorman at a grocery store. The doorman told them politely, and in great detail, exactly how Ryan used to speak to me in the lobby. Funny how witnesses ruin revisionist history. Last I heard, Ryan transferred to another boutique across town. Vanessa stopped speaking to him after he tried staying on her couch for nearly a month. And me? I finally understand something I wish I'd learned years earlier. Love cannot survive inside constant disrespect. Eventually, one person starts shrinking so the other person can keep feeling large. And that isn't romance. That's erosion. Ryan was right about one thing, though. He really was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because he loved me well, but because losing him forced me to realize how peaceful life becomes once you stop begging someone to treat you like you matter.